You know that moment when you're watching a movie, glossy, sleek, filled with action and weirdly profound, and you think, wait, why did this bomb? That's The Island, a film so visually beautiful, so thematically rich, that it made cloning ethics feel like a car commercial, in the best possible way. Released in 2005 and directed by Michael Bay, yes, that Michael Bay, the patron saint of explosions, The Island should have been his magnum opus. His I can do sci-fi too, guys statement piece. It had Ewan McGregor at his post-Moulin Rouge peak, Scarlett Johansson right before Lost in Translation turned her into an Arthouse muse, and Sean Bean, whose contract with the universe clearly states he must perish in everything he touches. And yet, critics shrugged, audiences ghosted. It flopped so hard it nearly buried Bay's attempt at serious cinema. They wanted Transformers. He gave them Brave New World with abs. Let's rewind. It's the mid-21st century. Humanity's destroyed the environment. Shocker. And the few survivors live in a sterile, underground facility where everything is controlled, from their diet to their dreams. The residents believe the outside world is poisoned, and the only way out is through a lottery that sends lucky winners to the island, a supposed paradise, the last uncontaminated zone on Earth. Of course, it's a lie, a big, shiny, dystopian lie. Because the island isn't real. The people inside the facility aren't survivors at all. They're clones. Breeding stock. Spare parts grown to harvest organs for their wealthy originals up above. It's Logan's Run meets The Truman Show meets Blade Runner, except with a protein shake and a jet bike chase. Ewan McGregor plays Lincoln Six Echo, a man who's starting to question things he's not supposed to question, like why his friends keep disappearing after winning the lottery, or why his tofu breakfast tastes suspiciously like sadness. He's curious, restless, and just self-aware enough to be dangerous. And that curiosity, it starts with something small, dreams. Lincoln begins having strange, disjointed visions, flashes of memories, places, and sensations he's never experienced. He dreams of boats, of the ocean, of life outside, but in his world, such things don't exist. What he doesn't know is that these dreams aren't dreams at all. They're impressions leaking through from the man he's cloned from. Dr. Merrick, Sean Bean in full mad scientist meets CEO mode, notices this anomaly. He's fascinated, then concerned, because clones aren't supposed to remember. So Merrick orders tests, invasive ones. He installs tiny neural probes inside Lincoln's body to monitor his brain activity, all while smiling and assuring him it's for his health. You can feel the unease crawling under the sterile surface. Lincoln's world starts to tilt. He begins sneaking away to the lower levels, where he meets James McCord, a weary technician played by Steve Buscemi, who keeps the facility's power systems running. McCord treats Lincoln like a pet project, sneaking him cigarettes and letting him glimpse forbidden areas. One day, while secretly exploring, Lincoln stumbles into the off-limits power facility and finds something that shatters everything he's been taught, a live moth. In a supposedly toxic world, that moth shouldn't exist. It flutters through the sterile vents, and Lincoln follows, down corridors, through ducts, into places he was never meant to see. What he finds there is pure nightmare fuel. He discovers that the island, the promised paradise, is nothing but a cover for industrialized murder. The lottery winners are being led away not to freedom, but to harvest rooms. Sterile chambers disguised as medical bays, where clones are strapped down like cattle and butchered for parts. There's one moment that sticks with you. Horrifying. Gut-wrenching. Lincoln watches as a clone, freshly chosen for the island, is prepped for organ removal. The poor man doesn't understand what's happening. He's terrified, begging to know where the beach is, why they're strapping him down. Then realization hits. Slow, dawning, devastating. He's not going to paradise. He's about to die. He fights, screams, breaks free for half a second before being pinned, silenced, and dissected like an animal. It's one of the most chilling scenes in the movie, because Bay, for all his bombast, lets it play out without the usual explosion or cutaway. It's quiet, clinical, and it shakes Lincoln to his core. From there, the illusion crumbles. Lincoln's mind races. Every winner he's ever known is dead. Every smiling announcement was a death sentence. The truth isn't just horrifying, it's personal. Because his best friend, his neighbors, the people he shared meals with, all slaughtered for someone else's convenience. When Merrick realizes Lincoln's discovered the truth, he panics. His perfect system is unraveling. And in the cruelest twist of fate, Lincoln's crush, Jordan 2 Delta, played by Scarlett Johansson, has just been selected as the next winner. That's the breaking point. Lincoln can't let her die. He races through the labyrinthine halls, dodging security patrols, alarms blaring. Merrick's cold voice echoes through the intercom, ordering containment. But Lincoln's done being contained. He finds Jordan, seconds before she's to be taken for transport, and tells her the truth. There is no island. They're not survivors. They're spares. The two of them run, sprinting through the compound, pursued by guards in white armor, bursts of gunfire cutting through the sterile silence. When they finally burst through the facility's sealed doors and emerge into the desert, it's almost blinding. The sun, real sunlight, hits their skin for the first time. It's freedom, but it's also confusion. They're newborns in a world that's bigger, louder, and messier than anything they've ever known. And this is where the story widens. In New York City, Jordan's sponsor, a famous supermodel named Sarah Jordan, lies comatose in a hospital after a devastating car crash. Her wealthy backers are arranging for Jordan 2 Delta to be harvested to keep Sarah alive. The urgency gives the chase a pulse. It's not just about freedom anymore. It's about a ticking clock and a human original who doesn't even know she's killing herself to stay alive. Meanwhile, Lincoln and Jordan meet Tom, Lincoln's original, the man whose DNA shaped him. Tom offers a slick explanation of the Cloning Institute and even pretends to help them expose Merrick. But something feels off. Jordan senses it. She warns Lincoln. And she's right. Tom is dying of cirrhosis, his liver failing, and he's desperate enough to trade compassion for survival. He betrays Lincoln and Jordan, luring them into an ambush that explodes into one of Bay's signature symphonies of chaos. Cars flipping, glass shattering, suburban LA on fire. But Lincoln's no fool. In a dizzying bit of deception, he tricks Laurent, Merrick's mercenary, into believing that Tom is actually the clone and watches as Laurent kills the wrong man. It's brutal, ironic, and perfectly Bay. Now wearing Tom's identity like a second skin, Lincoln steps into his sponsor's world. The penthouse, the wealth, the view. For a moment, he could stop. He could vanish into luxury, live Tom's life, let the rest of the clones die below. But he doesn't. Because that's the quiet brilliance of Lincoln Six Echo. He chooses morality over comfort. He could have been free forever, but he can't live knowing others are still imprisoned. He goes back. And yes, before that choice, there's a flicker of humanity, a tender, forbidden moment. In Tom's home, amid the trappings of a life he never lived, Lincoln and Jordan finally stop running long enough to fall into each other's arms. Back at the facility, Merrick is spiraling. He determines that Lincoln's defect, those memories, that sense of self, isn't a glitch but a genetic inheritance. Each new generation of clones is becoming more human, more awake. They dream, they remember, they question. And in true corporate villain fashion, his solution is genocide. Eliminate the latest 4 generations and start again. But not everyone under Merrick's command is as soulless as he is. Laurent, the mercenary who's been hunting Lincoln and Jordan, begins to crack. When he sees the barcode burned into Jordan's wrist, it triggers something. A buried memory of his own childhood in war-torn Africa, where he and his younger brother were branded like cattle. For the first time, he sees himself in the clones, people stripped of identity, treated as property. And that's when he switches sides. It's the moment Bay's usual tough guy with a gun archetype grows a conscience. And it hits harder than any explosion. The final act plays like liberation wrapped in mayhem. Lincoln returns to the facility, determined to free every clone and end Merrick's nightmare factory. The uprising is biblical. Clones flooding out of white halls into sunlight, the illusion burning behind them. Lincoln faces Merrick in one last moral showdown, a literal creator versus creation moment. And yes, Bean meets his poetic, well-earned end. When the smoke clears, it's classic Bay, but also surprisingly tender. The clones step blinking into the sun, tasting freedom for the first time. Laurent watches, silent, knowing he's finally done something good. And Lincoln, he gets the girl, the freedom, and ironically, the life of the man he was cloned from. The final image is pure poetry. Lincoln and Jordan sailing off into the sunset. Wealth, identity, and love reclaimed. not as fugitives, but as survivors who wrote their own ending. Because at its heart, The Island isn't about clones. It's about identity, about how we define humanity when technology blurs the line. Lincoln's awakening mirrors every existential crisis of modernity. He's not just escaping captivity, he's realizing he is someone, that he deserves to live not because of what he was made for, but because he can think, dream, and love. That's heavy stuff for a movie marketed like a Pepsi ad. And Johansson's Jordan? She's more than just a damsel on the run. She's the first to feel humanity, not as an abstract, but as a connection. When she touches sunlight for the first time, it's almost childlike. When she cries, it's because she's realizing what loss means. These are small moments, drowned out by Bay's love for lens flares, but they're there, glimmering like conscience beneath carnage. Then, of course, there's Sean Bean, because no morally dubious corporate overlord's story is complete without him. He plays Dr. Merrick, the man behind the clone farm, polished, precise, dripping with that special brand of British arrogance that says, I will definitely justify murder in the name of science. And as per tradition, Bean meets his maker by the third act. His death isn't just obligatory, it's poetic justice. The moment Lincoln faces him, you realize the student has surpassed the creator. The creation has reclaimed the right to live. Bay, for once, builds his explosions around a theme, not instead of one. But critics back in 2005, they didn't care. They called it empty spectacle, derivative, shiny but shallow. They saw the action and missed the philosophy, maybe because they couldn't process the idea that Michael Bay, the guy who made Bad Boys 2, was trying to say something meaningful. They expected dumb fun and got ethical horror wrapped in slow-motion hero shots. They went in for the popcorn and got Plato's Allegory of the Cave, directed by a man who thinks every moral revelation needs a 360 camera spin. And honestly, that contradiction is what makes The Island so fascinating. It's a movie that wrestles with its own identity as much as its characters do. It's trying to be high art in a summer blockbuster's body. It's a clone of smarter films that somehow became smarter than the originals. Visually, it's stunning. The color palette shifts from cold, antiseptic whites to rich, sun-drenched yellows once the characters escape, literally reflecting their journey from ignorance to enlightenment. Every skyline, every corridor gleams with precision. You can practically smell the disinfectant. And the score, that ethereal, swelling score by Steve Jablonsky, carries the emotion the script sometimes forgets to say out loud. The film's middle stretch, where Lincoln and Jordan wander the outside world for the first time, is quietly beautiful. Watching them gape at streetlights, it's a rebirth. They're like Adam and Eve realizing the world isn't cursed. It's alive. There's even a sly commentary on consumerism buried under the explosions. The idea that humanity has commodified not just its products, but its people, that the ultra-rich literally own lives, backups of themselves, ready to replace any failing organ. It's sci-fi capitalism, and it's terrifyingly plausible. But the audience didn't get that. The marketing sold it like a high-octane chase movie with two pretty people on the run. No mention of the existential cloning stuff. No hint that Bay was trying to pull a Gattaca. So when the film asked you to think and cheer, people just blinked. The box office? Brutal. It cost around $120 million to make and barely scraped half that worldwide. It was marketed like an action spectacle, released in the wrong season, and quietly left to die, like a clone whose sponsor stopped paying the bills. But over the years, something interesting happened. People rediscovered it. The same internet that saved Equilibrium gave The Island a second life. Forums, YouTube essays, sci-fi subreddits, all filled with people asking, wait, why did no one tell me this was actually great? Because it is great. It's flawed, sure, overlong, occasionally cheesy, and allergic to subtlety, but it's also deeply sincere. Bay, for once, made a movie about what happens after the explosions, about what it means to wake up in a world that sees you as disposable and choose to live anyway. In a sense, The Island is a movie about Michael Bay himself, a flashy, misunderstood creation trying to prove it's more than what it was built to be. A blockbuster that wants to feel something. And maybe that's why it didn't land. Because in 2005, we weren't ready for Bay to ask philosophical questions between motorcycle crashes. We wanted spectacle without soul, and he gave us both. So here's To the Island, the sleek, tragic clone of a masterpiece that was, in fact, the masterpiece all along. A film about life, freedom, and identity. Dressed up as a chase movie, a film that dared to feel in a genre that forgot how. And in the end, like its characters, The Island didn't fail. It just escaped, quietly, into cult legend, where all the misunderstood ones go to live.